If you know how a rubber band works, you probably know more a lot about economics than you care to admit. Rarely do you stretch your body out and it goes back to its original form. This is the same case with the economy, or at least what inflation does to it. In the case of fuel, the effects are even catastrophic. Think about it. Unlike any other commodity, a spike in fuel prices causes a collective rise in all prices across all other sectors. It's a domino effect. Your boda guy will charge you higher. Your taxi guy, food vendor, delivery services, restaurant, tuition, medical bills, virtually everything will rise in price. But do you know what won't rise? Your wallet. Now this is the tip of the iceberg. Hardly do we ever bother ourselves with the underlying causes or problems that lead to such events. In the case of high fuel prices in Uganda, we have an idea. Or do we? While other countries like Rwanda, Kenya, Tanzania and Nigeria subsidize their fuel by as high as 40%, the Ugandan government chose to move in the opposite direction and charge 35% on petrol and 30% on diesel. Amidst the global rise in fuel prices, governments around the world intervened to keep fuel prices unchanged for their citizens. Again, the Ugandan government said that they would not intervene and that our fuel pricing was among the best in the region. Assuming by region they were referring to East Africa. Uganda's fuel pricing is the highest in East Africa, followed by Burundi. Maybe by region they were referring to the African continent. Out of 54 African countries, Uganda had the 6th highest fuel pricing on the continent. Or maybe by region we were referring to the entire world. The average price of gasoline around the world is $1.23 per liter as of 24th January 2022. The average price in Uganda is $1.3 per liter. If you want to know the power of a government intervention, consider this. Whereas fuel to the DR Congo transits through Uganda, fuel prices in Uganda are higher than those in the DRC. The Minister of State for Energy made a press release reiterating that the increase in fuel prices is a global trend and that Uganda should not be alarmed because the country's fuel pricing is still the best in the region. By the way, I think Ugandan officials go through a lot of media training because it takes a lot of skill to deceive an entire nation with a straight face. Part of the reason the government claims that they cannot intervene is because of we lack the resources, but at the same time they propose and are willing to put up a new agency called the Petroleum Research Center to monitor the fuel prices. Seriously, who advises these people? The government also claims that the only time that they may be pushed to intervene is if fuel prices surpass the reserve price, and that obviously they cannot make the reserve price a public thing because the fuel stations will take advantage of it. Now, either this is a control measure to let the public think that the government has it all under control, or this reserve price keeps shifting upwards to accommodate the fuel stations. After all, most of the fuel stations are owned by the same government officials that keep the reserve price a secret. So we are told that the fuel crisis started at the Uganda-Kenya border at Malaba when new COVID-19 testing requirements that involve payment of a testing fee were imposed on truck drivers, including those that carry fuel. This was contested by the drivers who formed a sort of a sit-down strike, forcing for the fee to be removed, which was eventually scrapped off. But the damage was done. There was a huge backlog, and to make matters even worse, the only one cargo scanner that the country has at the border broke down. And not helping an already dire situation, the contracted agency to clear fuel cargo at the border only works from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Now how about that? New COVID-19 testing requirements, drivers protested, testing fees scrapped off, then the cargo scanner breaks down, and the fairly incompetent contractor. Sounds to me like there was an invisible hand at play here. Let me explain. You know that saying that there is no such a thing as a bad crisis? This was seen at the height of the pandemic, where autocratic and dictatorial governments found themselves with a lot of power to exercise over their own citizens through curfew and other restrictions like not having large protests or demonstrations. And you know the one thing that governments can't get enough of? Power. So it is quite convenient that when the government say that they will lift curfew in January 2020, the perfect storm for a fuel crisis happened. On the surface, it all looks legit. I mean, COVID-19 testing is slow, but we are trying our very best to keep you all safe. And we know that when things get tough, we resort to cheaper alternatives, in our case, the borders. But after all sectors of the economy were told that they would have their curfew lifted, guess the only group that still remains imposed with curfew rules? The borders. Sign the petition. It's your duty. We owe to them. There are no such things as accidents when it comes to the grand scheme of things, especially with major things like fuel. Trust me, our leaders are more competent than that. It's all kind of like a game of chess, and there is a method of madness to it. A simple illustration would be like trying to replace Museveni with his son Muhoozi as the next president. Problem is, Muhoozi does not look very presidential. So what do? We create a crisis that looks simple on the surface, but with bearing effects for common citizens. Close the Uganda-Rwandan border. I said common citizens because the border is closed but not closed. And why not? The Iranian president is a close family friend after all. He will play along just fine. And after over a year with no hope in sight, we send Muhoozi to negotiate the crisis with Rwanda. And in less than a week later, the Rwandan government announces to open the border. Who looks presidential now? Hey, I could be wrong. Remember our rubber band effect at the very beginning that we didn't fully explain? Well, what happens when you constantly stretch a rubber band? It can't go back to its original form, right? This is what happens when something as major as fuel is tampered with. The price of fuel may go back down, but it won't go back to where it was originally. This is the same for all other commodities like food, bus fares, and so on. And all this has to do a lot with capitalism and perception. No, not demand and supply. It's just plain hard for a bada guy to stop charging 10,000 shillings and go back to charging 5,000 shillings. And that, my friends, is the rubber band effect. Thank you all for watching to the very end. Follow the link in the description to sign the petition. Please like and subscribe. Until next time, bye.